Today we're going to be breaking down a single fight and how simple pathing was able to create a significant advantage for one tier. The fight opens up in Beach. Darko spots the enemy team and dodges a volley of Adina spells and then continues to walk towards the enemy team. Darko's team is pretty far away, so normally walking up would be ill-advised. However, since Adina just used all of her spells and Jenny doesn't have too much damage at this point in the game, it's pretty hard for the enemy to actually punish him. Still, the question is, how does Darko force a fight from this position? Let's look at his options. If he walks in an upward curve, the enemy can clearly just walk it uptown and probably into forest as well. If he walks in a straight line at them, the situation is pretty much the same. And then there's finally this downward curve. Although the enemy can still walk into forest, if they walk into uptown, the Darko can cut them off here. In addition, if the enemy pushes down towards him, then his teammates can join the fight at an angle that gives them easy access to the backline. In any case, the enemy Jenny walks forward and puts herself in a position where she can't make it to uptown reliably without being intercepted by the Darko unless she invests resources. So Darko walks forward and tries to pressure out the usage of those resources. Since there's still little threat, the Darko should have used his Q earlier for the move speed so he can pressure a little bit more easily, and he should have used his W later to guarantee that it landed. Darko wiggles back and forth here to bait the enemy defensive tools. This convinces the Jenny to E upwards, likely trying to preemptively avoid the Darko E. This puts her in a really bad position where it's extremely easy for Darko to control the choke and split up the enemy team. So Darko E's forward here, and this accomplishes a couple of things. If the Jenny uses her resources to run to forest, the Lennox becomes a viable target. Darko can CC her and kill her, while her team can't protect her easily. If the Jenny does try to walk into uptown to regroup with her team, Darko can easily line up an R to force her into his team. The Jenny ends up trying to do just that, and Darko R isolates her and easily gets her killed. Now, even though the Darko team has a big advantage, Darko still waits out the Jenny R before going in. This is to avoid the risk of taking too much AoE damage with his team and losing the fight. In addition, the Darko doesn't have very good cooldowns to fight anyway, he just used everything on the Jenny, so walking forward wouldn't do too much. His teammates also have enough resources that they should easily be able to finish the Jenny anyway. Neither of them have used their Blink or their ultimate yet. So then Darko pushes forward, Nikki picks up the Jenny kill, third team joins the fray, and everybody flees. Now let's take a look at the Jenny and what she could have done to avoid getting picked here. Adina being on cooldown means that Jenny should play a bit more cautiously. Instead, she pushes forward to auto aggressively, which is still okay because Jenny is very hard to kill. However, it should be clear when this auto is used, that Jenny is in a vulnerable position. Jenny has good defensive tools and can still easily escape though. Simply putting down Carpet, which is a knockback in Black Dress, would easily buy enough space to walk away. She also has 4 mobility tools between E, Pistol Skill, RE, and Blink. Using E to go towards Uptown would put her out of range of anything except for Darko E, and using one more skill would let her avoid the E pretty easily. In any case, after the E was used, her only good option becomes to walk towards Beach Wolves. She has enough mobility she might have been able to escape this way. After the Darko R, there's very little she could have done. Blinking earlier is about it. In short, she let herself be split up instead of playing more proactively to stay safe. Now let's take a look at the Lennox. When the Jenny walked up to auto, the Lennox should have also walked up. She can trade with the Darko without much risk, and it puts her in an easy position to use her skills to prevent any engagements. The biggest mistake comes from not recognizing that this Jenny auto put her into a bad position. The Lennox should walk forward to deny the Darko from this choke. Simply walking forward and using E would prevent him from getting into that space, and using EW would guarantee that there's no way that he could aggress here. The same is true even after the Jenny E. The Lennox just needs to walk up and CC the Darko, that way he can't apply pressure. Instead, she just kind of walks around, doesn't do anything, and lets the enemy control the space. The Lennox throws her W. This is a waste. Even if the W had hit, it wouldn't have helped at all. She should have saved her W to try to help the Jenny after she gets rezzed. When the Jenny gets rezzed with Lennox having no E or no W, there's nothing she can do to contribute, so she dies for free. In short, her positioning made it really difficult for her to help her team, and she wasted all her CC. Both the Jenny and the Lennox would have been much more useful if they had used their skills a lot more proactively. The other members of both teams did not have key roles here, but they still could have done more. Istvan wasted a lot of time and skills before the fight. He should have walked directly towards the enemy so he could follow up the Darko easier. He also played too defensively after the Jenny R. He could have just walked towards the enemy team to escape the Jenny R and been in a better position to aggress. He still has a lot of cooldowns. Nikki should have walked forward more directly after the Jenny R and W'd it in order to move forward and prep empowered E. Using unempowered E after R is pretty terrible follow-up and let the kill get stolen. Adina could have played a bit more aggressively when Jenny was getting picked, but it likely wouldn't have mattered much. To summarize, the Darko walked in a way that opened up an avenue of aggression, and the Jenny team's inactivity let him easily split the fight. Even discounting abilities, if the Darko had walked worse, or the Jenny team had walked better, the fight wouldn't have been so one-sided. Walking effectively is an important part of a tonal return that is often overlooked. When it comes to walking, try to think about what the enemy wants to do so you can be in the right place at the right time.